What did we watch last night? What was that at Madison Square Garden? How do you put that game into any kind of perspective? I assume you watched it. What did we watch last night, Coach?
So obviously something that we've never seen before. Um, and it's super interesting to me. Like I'm watching the series with a lot of interest. Like Tom Thibodeau and I are really really good friends. We were both assistant coaches with the Timberwolves. My dad brought Tom into the NBA, and then Mike Brown went to the University of San Diego, which is where I went. And then on Mike's staff, one guy that played for me, Chris Gent, played for the Rapid City Thrillers when I was a head coach there. And then Brendan O'Connor, his first job out of college was working for the Florida Dogs in the old CBA. So I'm watching this thing with great interest. Um, from New York side, obviously the will to win, the no panic, the chipping away, and then from the Spurs, and it's really hard too. I mean, they have a young team that lacks experience. They have a head coach that's young and is only going to get better. He's already reached greatness. Coach Johnson has. He's going to keep getting better and better. But just like a player that needs reps, and certainly the young players on the Spurs team, coaches need reps as well. And so, this is going to be a great learning experience for San Antonio. It really is, because you look at a young coach who's taking a team to a championship series right now, and then a young nucleus. I mean, this team, for the next 10, 12 years could see great things. But it started, in my opinion, with poor shot selection. And the poor shot selection, when you're up 30 and then it gets to 20, and then you might take good shots when it's 20 and a couple of them don't fall. And then the opposing team makes some very, very high degree difficulty 3-point shots. But you always kind of look like, what are the changing parts of this game? One, Jose Alvarado changed the energy of the game, in my opinion. He picked up full court. He sped the Spurs up. They started their offense later in shot clocks because of a role player who came in and changed things dramatically. To think about Brunson playing the entire second half, the durability, that's hard to do when you're down 30 and then to play an entire second half of a game and then be a guy that is taking big shots. And then the other big component of this to me is Wemby's flagrant foul on Karl Anthony Towns. I thought that kind of started the avalanche as well. So those are just some key things that I as I was watching that thing, Rick, that I thought were really important. Maybe just from a coaching perspective, things that stood out to me. And then the other thing is just like having a natural point guard because Fox is a scorer, and that's what he's do. He's not a traditional old school 1980s point guard, which the NBA doesn't have a lot of those. But when things start going south, you really, really need somebody that can control the game out on the floor. Because Coach Johnson might have been telling, and I'm sure he was telling his guys exactly what he wants to happen, but sometimes it doesn't go as planned in the huddle. I know everybody thinks that what a coach says should be executed by the players out of a huddle. It doesn't work that way. And so those are just some of my, observations.
I love it. I love it. The great Erik Musselman hanging out with us here on Beyond the Surface on the X-Rated Sports Network. Dwight Walton, come on in here.
Good afternoon, Coach. Thanks a ton for gracing us with your presence today. Really appreciate it. And listen, I want to get back to your program for a second here before we get back to the NBA. When people hear USC, a lot of us think about the football program first. So, how difficult is it for you to establish your basketball program? I know you've done a lot in the community. You've invited some fraternity brothers to your practices. You've bought some meals for some students. You've played pickleball with some of the tennis players on campus. You want to fill the Galen Center. You want the Galen Center to feel like the Rose Bowl does for the football program. What is important to you to establish your program, not only in Southern California, but to make them relevant nationally once again?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a lot of, when you look at the history of USC basketball, some of the coaches, whether it's George Raveling, whether it's Tim Floyd, whether it's Henry Bibby, there's been some great coaches here that have won and had great players that guys like Paul Westfall, that Hall of Fame type talent. But what we need to do here is we got to win. When you're in LA, you've got to win at a high level, and then you have to have some star power on your roster. And we took this job. When I say we, the coaches that came from Arkansas with me, my wife, we all knew that the tradition of USC football, that makes it more attractive that we have a program on campus that everybody recognizes. Everybody knows that it's a program that's had greatness in its past. But I look at our women's team, and you look at where our women's program is and going to be this upcoming year. There's great excitement because of Juju Watkins, a star player who's going to, has proven that she can take her team into NCAA tournament environments and win games. You have Jazzy Davidson. And so when you start adding players that nationally, we don't need to know Jazzy's last name nationally or Juju's last name. And so for us, we need some of our players to produce on the floor at a high level. And then we need to get our student body involved, because we all know there's traffic in LA. There's so many options. But the one thing that we've got to do is we've got to get students in our building. But the way to do that is you got to win, and then you have to play an entertaining style of basketball. You can't just hope that you win basketball games, but then your students on campus have to have a connection with the players on your roster. And that's up to our guys to engage with their fellow students. Whether they're walking around campus, they're going to have to do their own promoting, not just on the floor.
So to add to that, you talk about Juju Watkins and Jazzy Davidson on the women's side. How important is Elijah Arenas to your program in that regard? We understand that you had a great offseason in terms of your recruiting, all of the McDonald All-Americans that are coming into the fold. You did well in Southern California as well in terms of your recruitment. How important is Elijah Arenas to you, extending that to having that type of star power to where fans not only are going to want to go see the women play at the Galen Center, but are very going to be attracted to the men's program at USC as well?
Yeah, we feel like Elijah's got star qualities. He can go get his own shot at will. He comes from great pedigree. He's an LA kid. He's a former McDonald's All-American. He was on draft boards before his injury. And so, for us, we felt like when we got the job, that class that's just coming into college basketball right now was a loaded LA class. And Elijah reclassified up. So he actually should be an incoming freshman. But we felt like when we got the job, 2 years ago, we had to get two of these LA star players. And we did it with Christian Collins and Elijah Arenas. And like I said, Elijah was young last year, one of the youngest players in college basketball. And with his dad being a former NBA player, his dad's got a platform where he's very, very recognized. The Ratliff twins, whose father, Theo, played for the Lakers here in LA. 5 McDonald's All-Americans at one point in their high school career on the roster. So that's the type of hype that we're going to have to need here in LA. And then the guys they've got to go out on the floor. We've got to have a great 8 weeks of our summer program, and then we've got to have great 8 weeks of player development in September and October before we play games in November.
Well, it's like you said, it's right now you guys look the part. Now you have to put the product on the floor and make sure that's the part that's most important, looking great on the basketball court as well.
Yeah, we'll look good in layup lines. We got to produce now.
That's right.
Hey, Coach, I don't know if you saw it. Guys, put that comment up from Angelina again. Angelina's gassing up Coach Muss's program here. But throw that one up. This one right here. One of the best program builders in college basketball, says Angelina OG to the great Erik Musselman. I like that. All right, Ashley Neville, come on in here.
What's up, Coach? It's so great to have you. Thank you so much. You said a lot of things I want to touch on, but I did have one question specifically. A lot of talk right now between Fox and Harper. Obviously, Fox is a veteran. He just got paid a huge contract. But it looks as if Harper is playing a little bit less scared and coming up in big moments. So at what point in a playoff or a final series does a coach have to throw hierarchy out the window and just give the ball to the guy who's actually impacting winning, even if he's younger?
Great question, Ashley. I'm gonna kind of go to an example that we had at Arkansas. We had a starting center that started every game, and we won our first NCAA tournament game. And going into the second game, it's not often you change your starting lineup if you won an NCAA tournament game. And Jalen Williams, who's now with the Oklahoma City Thunder, he was ready to start at that point of his career. And so we went with a younger player. We went with a less experienced player at the center spot, and we did it while we were still winning. But it was the right time for our team. It was the right time for the individual player. I don't necessarily, I don't know if Fox was nervous or what. I just don't think that's his position to have the ball in his hands and be a decision maker. Like the one turnover that happened at half court, he got himself in the air off of a middle pick and roll, and based on the coverages that the Knicks played, he just needed to keep his dribble. And you're right that right now Harper is playing phenomenal. When you think about a rookie, but having played against Harper, and we played against him during the regular season when he was at Rutgers, and then we played them and beat them in the Big Ten tournament as well. We knew playing against him in college that he was going to be an immediate impact player based on his pedigree, based on his toughness, and based on his confidence. Because one thing with Dylan Harper, he is not scared of the moment, and you can see it and you can feel it. He makes really, really good decisions. He'll make a shot and then come down and move the ball for 3 straight possessions. But that's also because he's a little bit more of a traditional natural point guard, than probably Fox is.
And then you alluded to this earlier, and I've been seeing this all over social media saying, oh, Mitch Johnson needs to get fired, and it's all Mitch Johnson's fault for letting his team jack up threes and for running a bunch of plays for De'Aaron Fox and not I think for like the final 10 minutes, I don't think he had ran anything for Dylan Harper at that point. But when a young team blows a lead like San Antonio did, how much of that is execution? How much of it is coaching? And how much of it is just players maybe not being ready for that big moment?
I think it's all 3 things combined. Like as a coach, I'll come home from a game and my wife will have like a list of like 12 things, and I'm like, you don't think that those 12 things were addressed during the game, halftime? So sometimes it's like an execution thing. Because Coach Johnson, like somebody his age to lead a team to an NBA championship round, like that's incredible leadership. Things went haywire for them. One of the games in San Antonio that they should have won, and then last night, obviously, I mean that's a historic, loss and a historic win for the Knicks. But there's a lot of stuff that has to happen. And they'll grow from it. They really will. But the true sign of leadership and everything else is going to be like, how are they going to respond the next game, because mentally, to get your team ready to play in a short, quick turnaround with travel after a devastating loss. I mean, if they could ever come back and win this next game, that's a great, great sign for San Antonio, because it's going to be really hard. It would be hard to get a veteran team with a veteran coach to rally after losing a game like that. But there was a game I remember I think we scored like maybe 3 points in a quarter against Toronto, and we were up. And this was when I was with Golden State. We were up by a large margin. The game went into overtime. And I just remember our assistant coaches, I'd sit down next to them. They're like, Coach, we haven't scored in like 4 minutes. Coach, we haven't scored in 8 minutes. Coach, we haven't scored in 9 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, no crap. Like, you don't think I know that as the head coach? I'm trying to push the right buttons, trying to get the ball in the right players' hands. And sometimes things, like you might feel comfortable with Fox and you go to it, and then you're thinking, all right, he's had that thing in his hands 4 times. I know the 5th, 6th, and 7th time it's going to work, and then it doesn't work. And then that's when, you got to deal with what you got to deal with on social media and second guessers. But I guarantee that Coach Johnson knows his team a heck of a lot better than anybody
100%.
outside of his inner circle.
Thank you, Coach.
He knows his team a little bit better than Eggman out there on X, for sure. Katie Felber, come on in here.
All right, the Must Bus. Sir, it is an honor. So you've said that the Trojan roster right now reminds you of some of your best Arkansas teams. And like you mentioned, there are 5 McDonald's All-Americans, including Elijah Arenas, who's from the Valley, like me, shout out 818. The Trojans have never won an NCAA championship, and the last time they made it to the Final Four was in the 50s. When you look at this group specifically, what do you think gives them the chance to accomplish something that has never been done before?
Yeah, so length, we have some experience, we have youth, but the hard part for the West Coast teams is to travel in the Big Ten, and so you've got to have depth as well. And so we feel like we have depth. When you walk in our gym and you look at the size of our team, because the Ratliff twins are both over 7 feet. Erik Rebe from UConn is close to 7 foot. Christian Collins at the small forward spot at 6'7". Elijah Arenas is all of 6'6", 6'7". At the guard spot, Rodney Rice has good. So we have really good length across the board. We have size. Now it's going to be, what kind of culture will we have for the entire season? Who's going to accept roles? Will we move the basketball? Are we, what's our mental toughness playing in sold out buildings on the road with Big Ten travel? So all those things are areas that we've got to prove first to ourselves before we even prove it to anybody outside our own building. But we do feel like this roster is built very, very similar to our Arkansas teams that made Elite Eights. And, the whole goal for everybody in college basketball is how do you get into the NCAA tournament, and then how do you have your team healthy, both mentally and physically, and get yourself ready to advance once you do get into March.